we're an enterprise platform versus a practice management platform. And essentially, you see a lot of practice management platforms in smaller businesses, and they work really well in terms of providing the functionality that you need to do the various processes that you do. Where the issues come into play with that is that as you move forward, they tend to start to have difficulties by virtue of the fact that it becomes more difficult to communicate as a company gets larger. It's a lot easier in a smaller company to sort of find your way around to the areas that you need to, talk to the people that you need to talk to, and ensure that you have kind of a tribal community of things that take care of all of the necessary processes and so forth. So what a lot of companies experience when they're going through a growth process is that practice management software that may have served them pretty well up to a certain point, they start having to develop a larger and larger number of workarounds, or those workarounds become a little more cumbersome because the volume increases, and now it just ends up being a lot more manual work that they have to do. That essentially there isn't a resolution within the software itself to deal with that, because it's really designed to work in the smaller business modality. That was its purpose, and it actually is more than adequate at handling that. But when you reach a point where a company is large enough to be considered an enterprise, the approach to creating solutions and business processes and all of the things that how you flow those processes, the steps that you take to get from one point to another, from the beginning from A to B to C in a process, becomes much more formalized out of necessity, so that there's visibility by those that are at a management level. They can see it more easily, and individual users, when you bring people in and train them to do specific tasks, the enterprise platform acts as part of that structure in terms of the training, in terms of the capacity to ensure that they're getting all of the things that they need to have to do their job delivered directly to their desktop, kind of in the order in which they need to be given to them, sort of as an inbox function, so to speak. So what an enterprise platform does is that, assuming that the business is beginning to evolve their processes and trying to standardize processes, or they have multiple sites that do things differently, and now they're all trying to standardize into a singular set of processes that everybody can agree upon, is that you take the processes and you basically build the solution around those processes. In other words, the solution is designed to listen to the needs of the company and determine, oh, your intake, your admissions process has X number of steps in them, then we need to configure the software to respond to those steps that we've decided are the necessary steps in order to basically adopt that functionality, rather than saying, oh, the admissions process has these 4 steps on the software, and this is the way you need to use it. So it really reverses that entire paradigm to where basically the organization and the methodology behind which they've elected to pursue all the functions they have in their business, from admissions through scheduling, or through the contracts management, or their provider management, their patient management, all of those things become a more of a responsive function in terms of how the software is designed to work. Plus, the other thing that it does is it creates a standard that is more easily and readily available for other people in the organization at a management level to see, and not just have the purview of what's around them in terms of logistically around them, but they can see sites that are a long ways away, and they can more or less look at them apples to apples. They can say, okay, in this area of functionality, this is happening at that site, same area of functionality, comparatively in another site, we're talking about the same things, because the processes at each one of these places are now adopting a certain standard, okay? How do we accomplish this? The way that we accomplish this basically is that we listen to you. When we go into an implementation process, we listen to the things that you tell us you need to see, the way you need it to look, and the way you need it to behave. We don't, in essence, tell you, well, this is the way it needs to work, and you need to understand, you need to do it this way instead of some other way. What we do, assuming that best practices have already been visited to some extent, or we participate in that process. But most organizations that are at a level where they're looking at the growth pattern that's happening and they're recognizing what that's going to be, that from that point forward, they're going through a process of determining how to make everything scalable. How are we going to grow the admissions process? How are we going to grow the billing process? How are we going to grow our responses and RCM in terms of how do we handle denials? And how do we ensure that things aren't falling through the cracks? And if we have people that need to have oversight, what tools do we give them to provide that oversight so that every day they have the capability of getting to those things?